The story starts 5 years ago, February 14th, 2020, we launched Dreams. And that should be great, right? But if you remember 2020, February was a really shitty time to launch a video game. If we had launched like a month later, we would have been like a digital launch of stuff. And if we had launched a little bit earlier, well, we would have had plans go to sync. But Dreams is not what I'm here to talk about, because stuff blew up and I left because, working remote during COVID sucked and the post-launch thing of Dreams sucked. And so it was on to the next thing. So yeah, then on to Adobe. It was, Alex had left for NVIDIA and PlayStation 5 had shipped. There was no chance of me working on VR now that the consultation stuff had finished and spec locked with PlayStation VR 2. And a friend was like, hey, do you want to make dream sculpting in VR for Adobe? And I was like, yeah. And he used to work on Dreams. Turned out one of the main graphics programmers on Dreams was going to join the team as well. So off to Adobe I went. For the highest paid first corporate non-gaming gig in 20 years. But it's still lockdown and it's still COVID. And that's begun a really interesting period. Talk about it another time. The short version is I was Adobe's go-to VR person. We were developing an OpenXR engine on PC, which is great. Get to talk to all the hardware partners, get paid really well. The team's really interesting. It's corporate, it's very America, but all good. There's a problem though. For the first time in my life, I've developed a problem with alcohol. Go through one of the worst depressions I've ever gone through. Managed to send my wife to get her master's because we had more money. But, well, it looked like I was about to jump in front of a fucking train. But instead, what if I rode it? What if instead of jumping on the train, I just try to pay the mortgage? I do a bunch of improv classes. First time I'm back on the stage in, God, over 20 years, which was a blast. I loved it. Get heavy into my skating, do everything except my job to try to get satisfaction. But of course, I just really, really miss video games. And it's through this I discover Godot. I go 4 days a week, and I start playing around with the idea of starting a VR game studio. And, I could have gone and enjoyed someone else's studio, but I was like, done Dreams, this is my dream project.
Southern service to London Bridge. The next station is South Bermondsey.
I've got some money from selling my soul to corporate America. Let's go make my dreams a reality. And so I started this awesome place called the Tentacle Zone. This wonderful collaborative space, and I'm happy for the first time since 2020. All good. There's only so long you can ride the train of depression before it rides over you. So, despite getting a personal trainer, despite buying a flat, despite, doing improv, doing all this stuff, all the skating, the side projects, it wasn't enough. So, I quit Adobe to start my company. Everything was looking up. The Tentacle Zone was this great new space where I had collaborators and I could work with people, and it felt like being back in a studio again. I had funding potentially lined up with Meta, really strong potential, and I had publishers who wanted to talk to me. Everything was looking great. But then I made the jump. Not long after making the jump, one of the publishers gets into trouble financially. Meta's funding starts to get pulled. People who had funding agreements actually had their funding cancelled. The Meta store gets relaunched, and a lot of established devs like myself lose the advantage, potentially unfair advantage we had, but we lose the advantage we had. And the landscape changes. As all this is happening, the co-working space, Tentacle Zone, that gave me the courage to make the jump, that sort of brought me out of that dark period, it fell apart. The company running it went into administration, and we sort of started scattering to the wind. Now, this is a problem. It was the registered address of the office, it was all kinds of things, but worse, it was my support network. Then at the same time, my wife gets really sick, goes into hospital, has emergency surgery, and, well, it's not fun. Good news is, she is currently recovering from her second surgery this week, and she's much better. But we're skipping ahead. I found office space with a friend, and he's got a studio space, lovely guy, I've known him for years, and he gives me the studio space for free, and I'm like, thank you so much. But it's December, January. As a South African moves to UK, the weather hits hard. My birthday's in January, I'm used to being a summer baby. And it's my 40th birthday. And, well, I'm old. Between the studio closing down and other stuff happening with my life and everything, I realized December and January have gone by and I've made very little progress in the game. Oh, I should also note, the game we originally were developing, we canned after evaluating the market and realizing it wasn't right for the market. So we're already behind. But we had this great idea, this puzzle game that we're going to ship in 2 months tops. Start fighting with Godot. Because Godot, I love it, but it has problems. And as a commercial engine, especially commercial VR engine, and I mean, it's a great VR engine, but as a commercial engine, especially like getting onto platforms and stuff. Anyway, hard times. Come out at the end of January, realize I've done as much development work in all of December and January as I normally do in about a week. And it's time to face the real problem. Yeah, sure, Dreams is hard, and working for American corporate and not working video games is extremely hard. But the real challenge through all of this was COVID lockdown and loneliness. And now, as a lone VR developer in the winter months, which I never do well with, I realized the problem. And so, speaking to my wife yesterday, I was like, well, I need to fix it. So for the next 30 days, I'm going to talk about it. And I'm going to seek help. I did some other bits and bobs. I went after an ADHD diagnosis because I realize that is a big part of this, but anyone who knows, ADHD in the NHS, it takes a while. So there's that. I'm exploring a new co-working space in Camden. Reached out to my friends from the Tentacle Zone who have found a new office space and talked to them a bit about it. And yeah, largely I'm trying to force myself to get out and about, put myself out there, talk about my stuff. And it's not like it turned around one day and all of a sudden I had the answer. I did know the question. And that was, why have the last 5 years been harder than the 5 before it? The Barbican's indoor gardens are now closed, and it's starting to drizzle, so my plans have changed a little bit. The answer is simple. I need creative project deadlines. Just what I need. I am a creative person, I like to work on a deadline, I like the seasonality of projects. I didn't figure this all out at once. I figured that out sometime last year. I figured out why working on a perpetual project like Modeler wasn't going to work for me. It wasn't creative, it didn't have deadlines, it just wasn't the vibe. But there was more. I have since come to realize I suck at working solo. I need collaborators. Now, VR funding being what it is, I'm not going to get collaborators without giving up equity, and I'm not going to give up equity. Discussion for another time. I mean, rephrase that. I would give up equity to a collaborator, but not to a VC, and those are the people putting money on the table. But we need a solution. So what is the solution? Not where I planned to end up. But yeah, so the second thing I definitely need is collaborators. Collaborators involved in the thing. Don't have money for it, but I'm probably phrasing this badly. Point is, I need to talk to people about it. And the thing is, if I talk to my friends about it too much, well, then my friends become my work and my work becomes my friends. And I like to have separation, which leads on to the other big point, which of course leads to the final point. I like to break my life into pieces. I like to have different departments, and mental health is a thing. So I am chasing down that diagnosis. I am going to do 30 days of daily vlogs to see if it helps. I'm going to talk more about the project, the puzzle game we're developing. Obviously, I'm going to keep some stuff under the hood because, you know, privacy and borders and lines and healthy boundaries and all that. But, yeah, I think I need this. And this video is probably being a little bit choppy. It was meant to end in the Barbican gardens. And as I say, I didn't realize this all overnight. I know a lot of these problems. I figured out the questions and then the answers to these problems over a prolonged period. But then with the Dreams 5-year anniversary and with, well, everything kind of come to a head. So anyway, if you're all the way here, you're at the end of it, believe it or not. And yeah, it's probably been a bit of a ramble. I'm sure I'll some way edit this, but I'm going to try to keep the editing down to a minimal. I mean, the 360 camera makes that a bit tricky, but hey, AI auto tracking is great. And yeah, anyway, this solo VR dev journey thing and this sort of digital accountability of progress is hopefully going to help. Otherwise, fire me questions. You know, is it about VR? Is it about Godot? Is it about gamedev generally? And I'll try and answer them. And yeah, see how we go from there.